hitting out at Nationalist Congress Party Supremo Sharad Pawar for his remark on the Israel-Palestine conflict. Assam Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma said that Pawar would send his daughter Supriya Sule to Gaza. Sarma's remarks came days after Sharad Pawar said that the former Prime Ministers of India also, and I quote, stood firmly with Palestine, terming Prime Minister Narendra Modi's support for Israel as quote-unquote unfortunate. The NCP chief said that he neglected the real issue. He had also stated that the NCP stands by the people who originally belonged to Israel. Now, as we head into this discussion today, we are going to talk about how our different governments have taken different stands and sides while standing up against terrorism. Let's quickly listen in to what Mr. Sharad Pawar said and how Himanta reacted.
Israel-Hamas देश पॅलेस्टाईन हा तिचा मूल घटक आहे. मूल जमीन घरदार हे सगळं पॅलेस्टाईनच्या लोकांचं होतं. तिचं अतिक्रमण झालं आणि इस्रायल देश आला. त्याच्या आता खोलात वर जायचं नाही आहे.
इजराइल को लेकर शरद पवार ने जो बात रखी है,
मेरा लगता है शरद पवार जी सुप्रिया मैडम को भेजेगा गाजा में हमास के लिए लड़ने के लिए.
I'm surprised because Himanta Biswa Sarma ji has the same DNA as me. He's an original Congressy. So he and me share the same DNA. After going to the BJP, you know how disrespectful they are about women. So I'm not surprised, but I had hope from Himanta Biswa Sarma ji because we share the same Congress DNA. So I'm surprised how this change has happened towards women and the approach. It's probably going into BJP's little rubbing off on him, unfortunately, because I was always proud of him. Because I felt कि अपना एक कांग्रेस DNA का आदमी बीजेपी में जाके मुख्यमंत्री बना है, ये मेरे लिए बहुत बड़ी बात थी.
Vinita Hariharan, BJP spokesperson, with me on the broadcast. Advocate Manasvi Thapar, political analyst, also joins us on the show. Sumit Peer, senior political commentator, with us on the program. Raja Muni, political analyst, is also with us on the program. Vinita Hariharan, I'll begin with you. What do you make of Supriya Sule's comments that, Himanta, since he's gone to the BJP, he's lost all respect for women and he's also lost his perspective for what is right and for what is wrong. How would you in fact react to what's going on in Israel and with the Hamas at this point in time, concerning and considering how the Indian politics has responded to it?
No, absolutely. So the Prime Minister's stand right from the day one was very clear that we are standing against terrorism of all forms, shapes and hues. And, irrespective of the fact that which country is fighting against whom, we stand against terrorism. And this was a clear-cut terrorist attack by the Hamas, which is a known militant outfit. If you see the history of Hamas, you can see that, the very foundation of Hamas was its jihadi policy. The jihad is a policy for Hamas where they take, women and children hostage is one of their celebrated acts, and the engineer who devised the suicide bomb in Hamas is a celebrity in Hamas. So that's the kind of militancy which the Hamas actually manifests. So therefore, how can a country like India under the Modi regime, we've been fortifying our borders, we've been getting resolution of long-standing conflicts in Jammu and Kashmir, we've put a stop to all kind of terrorist attacks. We saw how vulnerable we were before 2014. We've had an attack on our parliament, and go on all those days, and we've got so much of robustness and resilience against terrorism. And such a country, how can we stand for Hamas? How can we stand despite what the Palestinian cause may be? And the Prime Minister has also now gone forward, going a step ahead and towards humanitarianism. He has actually even spoken to the Palestinian president today and offered to give humanitarian assistance to Palestine as well. So we have seen that we do not really support Palestine or Israel in this conflict, but we are for the the innocent civilians who've been actually caught in the crossfire, so to speak, women and children and thousands of people dead in the border. So that's something that we cannot, stand for, because we are the country who gave vaccines to the entire world, and we've been protecting lives across the last 10 years. This is not a rhetoric, but these are facts. Therefore, this is the policy of India, where we will never support any kind of terrorism globally, wherever it happens, and we will not get into geopolitical tensions or geopolitical, issues between two countries. What we are standing for today is for humanitarianism against terrorism. That's very clear. despite, and all the politicization that's happening in the country between Israel and Hamas is actually very sad, and instead of actually doing something in support for the cause, why don't we do fundraising for that? Why don't we do some productive work instead of, holding dharnas and,
Let me take a response from
Manasvi
to what you have said. Let me take a response from Manasvi Thapar on what you have just said. Manasvi, in fact, Vinita Hariharan, of course, is enunciating what her party stands for. That is, of course, being against terrorism, which India is, and secondly, with humanitarian aid. Do you concur with what she has said? And perhaps that is a balanced way of looking at it, right? Because the people of Palestine need the humanitarian support at this point in time, and terrorism in all its forms needs to be condemned.
See, moving forward, I would want to say that Indian stand of the Palestine movement can be divided into threefold. The first historical fold was that we were the first country in the United Nations when it talked about the partition of Palestine. We said that it should not have happened. In 1974, we were the country which said we supported Palestine Liberation Organization, and in 1988 we said that the state of Palestine should be there, and we supported it. So this was the time during which in the 90s we supported the Palestinian cause, and after 1990s we started having a balancing act in which we had a very good relationship with Israel, and also we wanted to balance the cause of Palestine without saying that we have moved forward in a balancing act. Moving today, when we see a war between that, nowhere India as a nation of non-violence could support any kind of violence there. But having said that, historically, we have always supported the Palestinian cause, and also we as a country would continue to do that. And at the same time, what Hamas has done, we as a country should not support, and we are not going to support that. The government stand is very clear on that, and the government stand on the Palestinian cause since 1947, after the formation of India, have also been very clear on that particular part. We were the country which did not support the partition of Palestine then. We were the country which supported.
But do you think Israel has a right to defend itself?
Obviously, see, any country which goes against any kind of violence should defend itself. They cannot give a free hand to any particular terrorism act, whatever may the cause may be. But you have to have an accordance of act towards that. It is totally right for Israel to fight back if their people are dying. There has to be a total negotiation. India is in a state of war with Pakistan, but still, even after 75 years, we try to have a negotiation with Pakistan in whatever cause we can do that. So similarly, that lessons, if Hamas, Palestine and Israel needs to learn from India, they should do that. We being the bigger player between India and Pakistan, we always go for negotiations there with Pakistan. At the last count, we have to fight, we fight then.
Sumit Peer, what is your take? Why are we internally divided when it comes to what's going on with Israel and Hamas, or rather Palestine at this point in time? Do we really need to in fact be on different pages, oppose each other every time on anything, even when something is happening outside of our country?
You see, Vinay, it is very ironic and it's very heartbreaking that some of the political parties for mere vote bank politics and Muslim appeasement are choosing to choose a side with Palestine. So, Vinay, here's a difference. Israel is fighting Hamas, not Palestine, not Muslims. So there's a clear distinction here. There are four parties here: Israel, Hamas, Palestine, and Muslims. So they are trying to make these three into one. Fighting Hamas is fighting terrorists, and fighting terrorists is fighting Muslims and fighting Palestine. That is not the distinction. Our Honorable Prime Minister has taken a very clear stand that India is with Israel because Israel was attacked, it was invaded. You have 2,000 jihadis entering and beheading babies, burning them alive, raping women, taking them as male ganima, and doing all kind of atrocities, shooting even 95-year-old citizens of the country. So this was not an act of terror, this was the invasion of Israel which was carried by Hamas. Now, what is in the Hamas charter? Hamas's charter very clearly says, anybody can Google it and find it right now as I'm talking. My duty is, Hamas's duty is to kill all the Jews everywhere in the world. We have to make this world free of Jews. That is what is the fundamental basis of Hamas. If we don't oppose Hamas, how can we oppose Lashkar-e-Toiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed? Then you will say, okay, Lashkar-e-Toiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed, they are non-state actors. What does Pakistan got to do with them? It's exactly the chicken and egg story. Now, when 500 kilometers of tunnels were built in Palestine, doesn't the people of Palestine know? Yes. These 16 to 23-year-old, youth, so-called youth, terrorists who invaded Israel, where did they come from? Saturn, Neptune, Pluto? No, they come from Gaza. When 500 kilometers of tunnels are opened, they know it. When masjids or mosques are used for ammunition dumps, when the ammunition dumps are under hospitals, when ammunition dumps are under schools, where did they come from? What about those 19,000 people who are coming every day and giving the information to Hamas? Where does the Hamas's cadre come from? And let's not let's make a clear distinction. There were 2 elections in the past. In both the elections, the Hamas has won. I will not say all the Palestinians are with Hamas, but the majority of Palestinians are also with Hamas. So trying to justify Hamas is oxymoronic. We need whatever was the geopolitics on 6th October 2023 is not on 19th October 2023. Last 13 days, every part of geopolitics, all the paradigms of geopolitics have changed. All-time big development, maximum arsenal has moved to the Middle East after this slaughter. When you invade somebody and slaughter and say, I want to kill you because you are a Jew, you have no right to exist. When I am throwing thousands of missiles on your citizens, Hamas is not attacking, people of Israel, military of Israel. The barrage of rockets which they are throwing are going to the citizens of Israel. Imagine if Israel doesn't have Iron Dome, how many casualties there will be per day? Which terrorist organization burns the kids alive? Which terrorist organization beheads newborn infants? Which cuts the womb of a mother and keeps the baby out, cuts the umbilical cord and waits for both of them to die? I mean, if that kind of barbarism is shown, that organization needs to be wiped out from the planet Earth. Then why did the world get together and wipe out ISIS? ISIS exactly did what Hamas did. So when the world got together and wiped out ISIS, why do we have division here? I mean, why are you trying to equate the patriotic Muslim of Indian with the Hamas? That is the question I want to tell them. Hamas is terrorist. No Muslim here is a terrorist. So why are you trying to equate? What is the equivalence you are trying to drive? Hamas is equal to Palestine is equal to Muslim. This is the wrong equivalence which they are trying to drive just to appease their cadres and some vote bank politics which they are doing. I mean, when Owaisi ji says Palestine Zindabad, then Mr. Sarma said, okay, go and fight for Hamas then. This is a logical end. We need the barbarism, the horrific acts of terror need to be condemned. If we don't condemn Hamas, we cannot condemn Lashkar-e-Toiba. We cannot condemn Jaish Mohammed. What is our right to go and beat the shit out of them? Then they are also trying to do some cause. They'll have some ideology which are they trying to fight. Terror is terror. There are no good or bad terrorists. They are not legitimate or illegitimate terrorists. Terrorists need to be wiped out. It is what the world has proven with ISIS. It is what the world has proven with LTT and some other factions. So the terror needs to be wiped out. There is nothing about it.
Right.
I'm very sad and unfortunate.
And who would know that better than us, Raja Munib? Who would know that better than us?
That last 75 years we are suffering. And we need one last point. If you talk about the two-nation theory as a solution, wasn't two-nation theory done for India and Pakistan? Has it worked? Are we very beautiful and buddy neighbors? Who has perpetuated 4 walls on us? Who is sending thousands of jihadis here? Who has done maximum crimes against humanity in India? And who has killed maximum Indians?
Right, and the difference Pakistan. Is, you're right, the difference is, Raja Munib, that if you compare the two countries, whenever we've had our problems with Pakistan, we have done surgical strikes, we have taught them a lesson, but the best part is that India has never, in fact, put the lives of civilians in Pakistan in danger in any way. But that's not true for Israel and Palestine, isn't it?
Absolutely. Look, as Sumit and Vinita said, Israel has a predicament, and the predicament is that they're not fighting an army of Palestine, which is a legitimate army or a conventional warfare.
It's a disproportionate war from both ends.
It is a disproportionate war, but it is an asymmetrical war because you are facing an enemy which takes civilians as hostages, hides behind civilians and children and women. They perpetrate act of terror. It is not an act of aggression, it is an act of terror. Now, terror has no tolerance in the world. And rightly so, I don't know why we are so confused. Some in our country are so confused that they're equating Hamas with Palestine. There is no equation at all. It's like equating Lashkar-e-Toiba with the state of Pakistan. Now, that is the kind of equivalence they're trying to draw, and that is a very dangerous equivalence they're trying to draw. Coming from the background where they have ruled this country and they themselves have been victims of terrorism over and over again, to come and to appropriate the kind of violence which we have seen on 7th and 8th of October in Israel, I think Congress Party or their allies are confused about their steps. They are trying to appease a certain radical sect, as Sumit rightly said. But more than that, the point is, why are they trying to do this? Because tomorrow the problem is going to be, if God forbid something happens in India, then also they are going to find equivalence of terrorism and try to justify the acts of terrorism which are happening in India or rest of the globe. The issue of Palestine and the issue of Hamas are entirely two different things. Hamas has not had an election in Gaza for last 17 years. They are the forceful occupiers, work as a terrorist organization, hide behind children, hide behind women, dump dump their ammunition and their men in civilian buildings. They make civilians as their body shield. And when you are, using human shields, and they've taken entire Gaza population and, sort of turned a human shield out of them. So the predicament for Israel is that how do you deal with this kind of terrorist organization? And when they're contemplating to go for the ground offensive, they will have to deal with a large part of civilian population, which Hamas would be very happy to, massacre just because they want to do that, and they want to hide behind them and show the world that the Israeli is the aggressor. But the point is that this is the first time I've seen that, a victim has to justify his acts of, it's his own acts. But the aggressor is somebody who is going scot-free. Nobody is asking Hamas the question that what they did in Israel on 6th or 7th is unacceptable all around the world. On the contrary, people are asking and putting a lot of questions on a state like Israel on their response and calling it's not a measured response. The question is, how do you measure a response to a terrorist act? What is the right, appropriate response to a terror act? Are they supposed to do the same things what the Hamas did? Are they supposed to do the same kind of violence, carry out same kind of violence in Gaza to say, okay, this is an appropriate response from our side? Absolutely not. They are trying to minimize civilian casualties, but what do? These guys hide under, tunnels which are in hospitals, in schools, in government buildings, in residential areas.
Right.
And
you're absolutely you're absolutely right, Raja. Vinita Ariyanan, do you think when it comes to international events or international problems, which India as a country has expressed its perspective, its take on, there has to be some sort of a restraint from the opposition as well, so that, we as a country appear to be holistic and are taken seriously?
No, absolutely. This kind of disparate voices, across the country is extremely disturbing, because I am now in the state of Kerala and I go through the streets and I hear, slogans supporting Hamas. We see processions coming out by the Congress party supporting Hamas. I wonder, am I part of India? Where am I living? Is this a kind of a country that supports terrorism? We need to have a unified voice. What the Ministry of External Affairs is saying, it's the government of India, it's a sovereign authority. We need to resound the voice of the sovereign authority across the country, and there has to be a rule for this. I'm sorry to say, but this is not freedom of expression. This is absolutely, making the country, like you said, disintegrated, and, letting the world know that we are not united in our voices. So therefore, I think we have to appeal to the opposition parties, at least for the sake of the security of their own people. They live in this country, don't they? So for the security of themselves, at least of them and their families and their, kind of the generations that they own, for the politics of themselves, at least let them, have a unified voice, for it's the sake of the country's image, the kind of the country that is going towards being the 5th largest economy, the 3rd largest economy projected to be, and then the G20 presidential, status that we enjoy, and the kind of leadership that we've been portraying. We're throwing water over all of that by this kind of, disconnected and separatist voices across the country. It's very unfortunate that we're politicizing an international issue where innocent children, grandmothers, and like how Sumit just described the gory details of the war, it's absolutely pathetic. And I don't know how we can politicize this and have jibes against each other, whoever it may be, from whichever party. I think we should refrain from such, kind of politicization of this kind of an international terrorism that's been going on in the Gaza Strip from so long. 2.3 million people in Gaza Strip. Why don't we think about them? Think of innocent lives and think of, human beings like us across the border. I think that's all I have to make an appeal in your channel.
Manasvi, you want to respond to that?
See, on a larger point, when it comes to the country level, I think whatever the external ministry says, that we all have to abide. But on the point of a democratic understanding, different political parties may have a different understanding. But one thing which remains very apt and should be considered by all the political parties, supporting Hamas is like supporting terrorism, and India cannot at any juncture support Hamas. We may have a different point of understanding on the cause of Palestinian people. We may have an understanding on how do we have a connection with the Israeli people. That could be a different political diplomatic understanding, which all the political spectrum may have a different approach towards it. But supporting Hamas cannot be tolerated and should not be tolerated from India's point of view, which has been in a state of terrorism because of Pakistan. We know how Pakistani agents have come and attacked us, and we are the people who have been victims of terrorism, and we understand the pain of a country when it goes through terrorism. And if any person or any political party has a stand of supporting Hamas, is actually supporting terrorism, and that cannot be and should not be tolerated and should be called out in open and should be talked about. Why are they supporting Hamas and what are the reasons to support Hamas? We cannot, as a country or as a political party or as political leadership, support Hamas.
Sumit Peer, concluding thoughts?
There is a very dangerous game which some political parties are trying to play here. Whenever something happens, they are trying to equate Indian Muslim for their political convenience with Lashkar-e-Toiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed. Now trying to equate with Hamas. Tomorrow they will try to do Hezbollah. Third day they will try to do Boko Haram. Who gave them this authority? Who gave them this license? Who told them that Indian Muslim is equal to Hamas or Lashkar-e-Toiba or all? Why are they trying to draw this equivalence? Why are they trying to draw this equivalence? There's an attack on Muslims. Why do you think Muslims would vote for you if you support Hamas? I mean, it is ridiculous. 20% of the Israel's population is Arabic Muslim. And 10% of the people who got killed were Muslims. And let me tell you, out of every 2 doctors in Israel, 1 is an Arab Muslim. That is the reality of Israel. These Hamas guys did not spare anybody. And let me make you one point, Vinny. There's one Jewish guy who started KPOs. BPOs is a billionaire in Gaza. He employed thousands of people, gave them jobs. He had only 1 daughter. I think Isabella or something. I cannot remember. Daniel was her name. She was among the people who was Hamas terrorists killed in out of those 350 kids who were in the dance festival. She told them, my father is this, he has given you jobs. And he said, oh, I have to kill you. With this mind of personality, why are we trying to get Indian Muslims into it? What have Indian Muslims got to do with Hamas, Lashkar-e-Toiba and all? Why are you trying to paint Indian Muslims in such a bad light? These are the questions they should be asked. And Indian Muslims should object to these leaders who are trying to equalize them with these global terrorist organizations. Being a Hindu, I categorically object to this way of politics. You can please a small bit of radicals and get a small bit of votes here and there. But Indian Muslims and Indian Muslim is not like that. You should refrain even from bringing name and shame to the India and patriotic Indian Muslim. That is my limited point of view.
Raja, concluding thoughts from you and then we end.
They really need to take the cue from the Arabian world. If you look at the UAE statement when the attacks happened, they categorically called Hamas a terrorist organization. And I think that is a distinction which everybody needs to make. You cannot, as Sumit is rightly saying, you cannot make the entire Muslim community as supporters of, Hamas. And, for polarization and for votes, if you're literally putting your nation into risk, because tomorrow if terror attack somewhere happens, you actually will have to give it an equivalence. And you are the one who are, they're actually what they're trying to do is they're trying to normalize the violence and they're trying to give justification to an act which is unjustifiable, and you need to commend it everywhere. So I think that's a very, very dangerous path they are treading, and they should be very, very careful of what they are actually aspiring to do, because dividing radicals and painting radicals with the same brush as a commoner is a disservice to the nation, honestly, and it will have repercussions maybe 3 or 4 years down the line, but then it is going to be very, very difficult, and they themselves are going to be blamed for it, no one else.
You're absolutely right. And of course, this has divided the world, and it's no surprise. It has done in the past. It'll continue to do that in the near future as well. Would like to thank all my guests for being a part of this conversation.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.